Well, my journey started at 12 with dieting. And we fast forward 50 years of dieting on and off, on and off. And when menopause hit, honestly, nothing mattered. Nothing worked. I mean, well, we'll show you in a few minutes what Heather and I put together for you guys, but nothing worked. I spent my whole life dieting. The weight would come off, it would come back, it would come off, it would come back. In fact, I'm writing a book right now called Dieting Sucks, and it's really just that journey. But when I got to menopause, I mean, it didn't matter what I did. I did spend a lot of time and went on a journey to figure out how to get to my ideal healthy weight and to understand my relationship with food. And our relationship with food goes back, obviously, to the very beginning. So I embarked on the journey 4 years ago, was able to take off the 40 to 46 pounds that I was looking for. I became an integrative nutrition health coach. I had been a certified hypnotist for at that time, about 20 years, and just started to put it all together. At that same time, I also had breast cancer, which I don't even think Linda knows. I don't even think I ever mentioned that to Linda. So everything was kind of happening at the same time. And I figured it out. And then I was like, I have to help. I have to help other women who maybe are lifelong dieters like me, or maybe like many of the women tell me, I don't know, I woke up one morning and suddenly, what is this? And how do I get rid of it? So I'm on a mission to help, to have you understand food in relation to your body, and to have you never feel deprived or that there's something you cannot have. So that's
Love that. And Heather, what about you? Tell us a little bit about your journey and what led you to have such passion around helping women through this challenging life stage of menopause.
Yeah, I mean, as a traditional kind of OBGYN, we're trained very heavily in OB. That's obviously life or death, and it happens very quickly when it happens. And I think when I counted, I stopped delivering babies about 3 years ago, and I delivered more than 5,000 in my career. And I figured that was a small town and I was good. And what I really started to find as I got older was that there wasn't a place for me in the doctor's office, the OBGYN's office. And I felt bad when I would have to rush out for a delivery and there was a woman that's 42 or 48 that's sitting there like, this isn't my life. What am I doing here? And I really started to feel for the neglected woman. The woman over 40 really didn't have a place to go that was really home. And I was tired of seeing women over 40 neglected, gaslit, ghosted in medical care. And so I really started focusing on the women 40 plus. And it's a really great age because it's such an empowered age that we've never been taught that that's what this is. This is great. We just have to certainly have a place at the table. And then I started working in the workforce because 20% of all women at menopause quit their job, whether they're a vice president, whatever they are, they stop. Men don't do that at 50. They don't stop just because they're not feeling good. And 60% of women are ashamed or embarrassed to even talk about their symptoms to coworkers. And that's a real problem because, we're just at our peak, at this age. We're not done. But it's sad that women feel like they have to be done. And so I really try to work in the corporate America to try to make sure that there's menopausal wellness programs in place and that there's education for women. Because while we're in a big city, most of us, and we have access to that, there's a lot of women in care deserts in this country and Canada, around the world. And there's a lot of women, lower income women that don't have access to people. And so we're trying to remedy that through getting to them through the corporate America area.
I love that, Heather. Thank you. And, as you said, 3/4 of menopausal women interviewed agreed that a woman's experience at the stage of menopause can actually negatively impact her performance at work. And 7 out of 10, 67% say that it actually can negatively impact her career. So you're right. This is a really urgent area of discussion and education. But first, let's define menopause and the stages of menopause. So Heather, we'll start with you. What causes menopause physiologically? And what are some of the early signs and symptoms?
Yeah, so if we all live long enough, we'll all go through menopause. Like there's the short answer. If we're lucky enough to live long enough, we'll all go through menopause. And it's basically a time of reproductive finality. We're not there to make babies anymore. So we're not bleeding and we're not breeding. And so what happens is the ovaries start to kind of lose all of their eggs, so to speak, that you can kind of put out. We're born with all the eggs we'll ever make, whereas men will make sperm every 2 days. And so once those ovaries get to a point where there's really no eggs left to put out and nature decides it's not safe for us to do so, then the hormones start to shift. So we lose estrogen and progesterone and testosterone. And then once we're 1 year with no period, that's menopause.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's great. And anything that you'd like to add, Debbie, in terms of the stages of menopause and what you have seen women go through physiologically?
When women call me, as I said, they're focusing on the weight, but then along with the weight is the hot flashes. And actually, as Heather was talking about the work environment, I remember years ago sitting and trying to, at a prospect's computer, trying to show him something and hoping he would become a client of ours with literally with sweat dripping down my face. And then 2 seconds later, I was shivering because I was sitting under the air conditioning. This is not a good professional look. And, what do you do with that? How do you deal with that? So I would say, Linda, they come to me about the weight, but then it's, will that help the hot flashes? What about the headaches? Oh my gosh, I'm not sleeping. My doctor says I'm in perimenopause, but has nothing for me. I mean, and I hear that over and over and over again. Nothing for me other than, or my doctor just wanted to hand me some pills for my anxiety. Here, take these. And it's so many things. We start going through all those different changes, the mood swings.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about that. You're right, Debbie. Many women begin noticing physical changes first, right? They begin noticing the physical changes due to menopause, such as hair, skin changes, joint pain, weight, body changes, hot flashes, night sweats. Those are some of the physical symptoms that often alert us that there may be some sort of transition that we're going through. But what are some of the most common physical symptoms, Heather, and perhaps some of the few physical symptoms that women may not connect to menopause? They may say, my hair feels different, my skin feels different, I'm starting to have all this weird joint pain. And joint pain isn't something that I normally have experienced before. Or as Debbie noted, there are weight changes, there's body changes, and certainly hot flashes, night sweats. But what are some of the physical symptoms that, women may experience early and not even connect to menopause?
Yeah, I mean, the Menopause Society in North America recognizes 33 distinct symptoms of menopause. And those are the ones that are medically recognized, which means there's probably another 33 that haven't been attributed yet, but maybe for our daughters and granddaughters in the future. The big ones, like you said, are, hot flashes and night sweats. That's what gets a lot of women into the doctor's office, but there's a lot more. There's cognitive issues, memory issues, anxiety, depression. So kind of, we say how you came into your reproductive life is probably pretty indicative of how you come out. So if you were a moody teenager and you had acne and you had all those things, you may see that same issue on the backside of things. Vaginal dryness is a big one that can really be a problem, especially sitting in a chair all day. It gets really raw feeling. Urinary tract infections, burning tongue, zaps, or feeling like electricity going through your skin and different parts of your body. Cold flashes, like Debbie said, are just as common as hot flashes, but no one ever talks about cold flashes. It's just, oh, I'm just cold. So there are so many symptoms. I'm never surprised if someone says, this is a new symptom for me and I'm perimenopausal, which is again like the 5 years before actual menopause. And is this related? And I say probably, because we haven't figured out everything about menopause yet. We're really just starting to look at this as a science. Most OBGYNs get trained about 3 hours in midlife care. That's it. 3 hours. So those of us that do this work really do it because we've passionately studied it as like, as a hobby almost. And so we're really starting to get into menopause as a science just now. So our daughters and granddaughters will see a lot of difference in our care, but there are so many symptoms.
I love that. Thank you, Heather. And so, Debbie, we know that menopause can cause disturbances to lifestyle and routine, like having trouble sleeping, brain fog, memory lapses, and more. And what are some of the most common lifestyle changes that you see among women that are going through menopause? Maybe some of the issues that women may not talk about as often, like brain fog, memory lapses, trouble sleeping. Are there other lifestyle and routine issues that may be disturbed because of menopause?
Well, I will tell you one that I experience, and that when I talk with my female clients, because I ask the question, they will tell me, which is vast differences in sexuality that they're going through. You mentioned, Heather, the vaginal dryness, but also just painful sex, not wanting to have sex. And this is from married women, single women. This is a big lifestyle change. In fact, I had a woman say to me the other day, "You went through that, Deb, and you were married." Well, imagine you're single and you're trying to date and all of this is happening. You're going through all of this while you're trying to do that. That is one. The mood changes were a biggie for me. I honestly, I used to say, I don't know. I'm afraid to go out driving because I don't know if somebody cuts me off. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do. One minute you're normal and the next minute you're like a lunatic or crying. That was a biggie. And these are all the things that women tell me, or like you said, Linda, the brain fog. God, I can't remember what I'm doing anymore. I feel like I'm in this fog. And, the weight is one thing. And granted, when that starts to be released, because if you're doing it in a healthy way, it's going to help some of the other things. But you're right, we don't talk about it. And it's odd. I mean, Heather, women always say, well, we only say so much about labor. That's the golden rule. Don't go into too many details. But it seems with menopause, we've accepted that same rule for no reason. Instead of sharing the information and giving each other as much, the fan is still by my bed. I don't really need it anymore, but it's still there if I want to click it on for 30 seconds. So I'm glad that you're seeing, Heather, that in your profession, that this is changing, because and one woman's symptoms is different from another woman's symptoms. So unless we're going to talk about it, it's kind of the blindfold stays there.
Yeah, I love that, Debbie. Thank you so much. And Heather, Debbie brought up painful sex. So for many women, they can experience painful sex, as you suggested, vaginal dryness, libido changes that can amplify feelings of anxiety, depression, moodiness, especially if they are feeling that change in their sexual relationship actually is having impact into their relationship with their spouse. So how can women begin to address some of the relational as well as sexual effects of menopause? Again, you noted vaginal dryness, Debbie just noted painful sex, but there are libido changes too that, again, because of those libido changes, it can amplify feelings of isolation, anxiety, depression, moodiness. So how can women begin to address some of those relational and sexual effects of menopause?
Yeah, now you're up in my jam now.
Yeah.
So I tell women our largest sex organ is our brain. That's it. It's our brain. It's not our clitoris. It's not our vaginas. None of that. You can have an amazing sex life with just your brain, which is why Shonda Rhimes is a very, very rich woman right now, because she came up with Bridgerton, right? And that's what we want. And I think besides, okay, so libido is, think about this. Nature doesn't want you to get pregnant at 50. So let's say you can still get pregnant. You're still having some periods. Nature doesn't want you to do that. because there's such a high risk of damage to that baby and a high risk of death to you. So there's an evolutionary shift that happens because we don't want women to get pregnant at 50 by accident. It happens rarely, thank goodness, but it does happen. We don't want that. But the other thing is that when you turn menopausal and you're midlife, you don't put up with crap anymore. You know who you are as a woman and what you may have tolerated from your spouse at 30 or 40 because they want to have sex and you're kind of like, I'll just lay there. You don't do it anymore because you have found your voice at menopause and you said, nah, I don't want this. I don't want to do this. And it's interesting when women come in, they say, well, my husband says I don't want to have sex anymore. I'm like, well, do you? And they go, well, he's kind of annoying and he just goes for it. There's no foreplay and there's no thought and there's no dating and there's no nothing. We're not going to put up with that at our age. We know who we are and we know what we want. And that is why Bridgerton is so popular. It's the tension, it's the heaving bosom, it's the great kind of like, that bodice ripper. We want excitement. We want anticipation. And we don't get that when he's like, hey, you want to do it? No.
Well, and Heather, I will, if I may, flip that scenario and say that in some circumstances, I'm speaking from personal, because I was experiencing painful sex and wasn't interested in it anymore and always had been. I tried a million different things. I'm not going to go into them right now. I didn't know Heather then. But then you get to the point where he doesn't want to because it might hurt me physically. So then you get that fear factor involved in it as well. And it's difficult. It really is to maneuver all that.
Yeah, we're not stupid. If something hurts, we're not going to go, if we go touch the hot stove, we're not going to go keep touching it.
Well, and then he's like, I'm like, well, let's try it. Let's try it. Cause I'm using this and he's like, I don't know. I mean, last time it really hurt you. I don't want to do that. There's no fun in that.
No. And men will keep going. They're like, well, just keep trying. I'll just keep trying. And women are like, no, it hurt. It hurt. I don't want to do it anymore.
Well, no, as I said, I'm speaking from personal experience. My husband, even if I said, hey, I'm trying this cream, whatever it is, he now is hesitant because of the experience of hurting me in the past. It kind of takes the romance out of it. If he thinks he's hurting me and I'm going, I mean, there's nothing romantic about that. So what ends up happening is you just give up.
Right, which can exacerbate the issues of isolation, anxiety, depression, things like that. Yeah. I appreciate that. That's absolutely right on. And speaking of, that is one of the most personal issues that women tend to face during menopause is, moodiness, anxiety, depression. So how can women begin to notice changes in their emotional baseline and their emotional reaction to situations, not just the physical, not just the sexual, but the emotional aspects of menopause? How can they become self-aware enough to realize that they need support, that they know how to ask for support? And what are some of the best first steps to help women find emotional equilibrium? So Heather, let's start with you and then we'll hop over to Debbie.
Yeah. So one of the biggest things is like teenagers, when we go through puberty, we don't have a lot of resilience. There's not a lot of emotional resilience there. So anything that affects, if you've ever had a teenage girl in your house, anything that's off for them can throw them into a wild tizzy, right? And they can cry, they can be, go beat ISIS the next minute. They can go, they can just lay there like a potato, but they don't have a prefrontal cortex. Their brain's not fully developed. Now, as a 50-year-old woman, you're having the same emotions. You can't put up with people's crap all day. And someone cuts off Debbie and she wants to flip them off, but she can't do road rage because she'll get shot. She's in Texas. And, and then you're crying over the Folgers commercial. The Folgers commercial where Peter comes home for the holidays and the mom wasn't expecting. It's been out for 30 years. And if you start losing every time at that commercial, you know that there's something not right. But we adult now. we don't do anything with that because we have a mortgage and a job and a car payment. So what we do is we just stuff those emotions down in there. And then what we do is we fly off the handle at our spouse, our best friends, our family. It's usually someone very close to us. We usually are pretty good about keeping it close to the vest otherwise. And that's why I say it's good to let your spouse, if they're a good spouse, and your kids say, look, if I'm really out of line, if I'm really saying something that's not right, would you just let me know, hey mom, this is too much. Like you're a little bit out of control. Don't do the whole, are you ragging or what's wrong? You're so bitchy. That doesn't help. Just say, hey, I just like to bring attention to the fact that you're a little bit emotionally unresilient right now.
Right.
What's going on? And that's the key to saying, okay, I need to let this go.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much, Heather. Debbie, what about you?
Well, I tell this story sometimes that, while I was going through all of this, every week I had a new solution. As I said, I didn't know Heather then. A new cream, a new pill, a woman told me try this, or I read something in a magazine, and I would say to my husband, should I try this? Should I try this? And he would look at me and he would say, try everything. And that's how bad it got at one point. I will say though, again, from my experience in working with women and what I do when I'm working with them, hypnosis will help. And if a woman is open to that, it is a great way to relieve stress, but also to learn self-hypnosis, so that you can take those moments and maybe just, get into that recentering, and some of that positive feedback you're giving yourself. But other than that, it's like, Heather, I mean, I did fly off the handle all the time. And I am an emotional person that way and was growing up. And you feel like you just don't have any control over it. So as I said, hypnosis will help, meditation, some women do yoga, but I think mostly it's important for us to talk to each other, to have those support groups where we can feel like we can literally just say, oh my God, what a shitty day. I mean, I had a hot flash on the way to work and then, a headache and my husband wants to have sex and I'm not comfortable, and really just let those conversations go. And I know those are much more recent than you would think. I had a lot of women when I told them about this talk with Heather who said, this is really important stuff. Women aren't talking about this enough. And I'm sure, Heather, you would agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, let's just think historically as women at midlife, most likely we were in a tribe of some kind. We were probably a hunter-gatherer society, maybe a farming society. And at our age, we probably would have lost our spouses by now. Our kids would be growing, maybe grandmothers, maybe great-grandmothers, if we had done it, 13 or 14. And so what was our job? It was to sit by a fire together all day and share our stories, share the tribe stories, share a community. We were stronger as a group of menopausal midlife women than we were as a single woman. And they would come up and they would say, grandmother, tell us where we go hunt for the buffalo. And you'd say, that way it looks good. And then we'd all kind of be like, we have no idea where the buffalo are. We're okay, go that way. And then we're like, yeah, we all agree. But that's how stories were passed down from generation to generation, was through the menopausal women. And this still happens in the animal kingdom. There's 5 species of mammals besides humans that go through menopause, and they're all whales. Every single other one is a whale. So orcas, they've been a lot in the news lately because they've been taking down boats in like this, over in the Adriatic Sea or something like that. And postmenopausal orca women, females, guard the young males. They are there for protection and as the matriarch of the pod. They're not put out to pasture. They are there as an integral. When they live up to 90 to 100 years of age like we do, they are an integral component of the pod machine. And the young males can't live without them. So we just start recognizing our power.
Well, yeah. And the fact that, as you mentioned before, Heather, you have a mortgage, you have bills, you have this. I mean, we're still very active. And I know, Heather, I'm older than you. And, we're still working. We're still doing all of this stuff in the midst of all this. We're not sitting by the fire and sharing, familiar stories and what's happening in the village. So that's just compounded with all of the other stress. And yeah, it's
Let's talk
true.
about that. Let's talk about some of the actions that every woman can do to alleviate their symptoms of menopause. Debbie, you've already begun talking a bit about that, talking about yoga and menopause and
Meditation.
ensuring that someone has a spiritual practice, which might be, prayer or meditation or something. But what are some of the recommendations that you would offer, from all natural lifestyle changes to the consideration of hormone therapy replacement, right? So hormone replacement therapy, rather. So, Heather, let's start with you. What are some of the recommendations that you would offer, from all natural meditation, lifestyle changes, diet, exercise, to the consideration of hormone replacement therapy?
Well, that is not just a quick question.
Right, I know. That's why I wanted to get to it.
Let's taste the rainbow of the Skittles there.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things that we can do and I say midlife women, because some of us may still be perimenopausal or maybe postmenopausal, is really keeping the brain active. And that's one thing is I like to say is keep learning new things. Don't stay where you are. So if I'll tell you this, I'll show you right here. So this year I started learning how to play the Tibetan singing bowls because I wanted to do more integration into my practice. So I think people learn languages, women learn languages, they learn new hobbies. There's a lot of things that there's still a ton of things for us to learn. And that's really good things about women in our age group was we're constantly learning. Use that brain, because if you use it, she keeps firing synapses and neurons and she doesn't get kind of sad. We don't want to get dementia, right? So that's kind of our goal here, is to keep using the brain, learn new things. Of course, and I'll let Debbie talk about diet and exercise here. I think use your vagina if you can. Use all of it, because if you don't use it, that's where the phrase came from. If you don't use it, you'll lose it. So that you're comfortable. I don't want anyone to be hurting themselves, but it's finding ways to kind of get around your symptoms. And again, if you think that every woman's got about 3 to 5 symptoms and there's 33 symptoms, that's like an almost an infinite number of possibilities for every woman. So you got to really find your secret sauce. Community is huge. So you find a community like Leadership Global, you find a community where you can find women and you can talk about it. And some women aren't there yet. They're not ready to talk about it. Linda, you mentioned that we have like 30 something RSVP and, you have 12 show up, 13, 14. And that's because women still aren't comfortable yet with the idea of talking about it. But that's okay. Those of us that are doing it will bring those women in. Come on, you're coming to the Taylor Swift concert with me. Let's go. We got to get those women in. And the more we talk about it, the more it normalizes the conversation. And then, of course, hormone replacement therapy can be a game changer for a lot of women. Some women can't take hormones for a variety of reasons or don't want to. And then you really got to find the right doctor to guide you through that part. There's lots of Ayurvedic medicines, there's natural herbs, botanicals, there's cognitive-based therapy as a treatment for menopause. And then, of course, we go into things like the medical components, pharmaceuticals that aren't hormones. And then we go into the pharmaceuticals that are hormones. There's infinite options. And it really needs to be for you specifically. If someone's giving you the same recipe as they do everyone else, move on. You got to find the person that's going to look at you as an individual woman and say, okay, what do you want to do? Let's figure this out together.
Yeah.
Debbie, how about you?
Well, one of the things we highly recommend as we're balancing out, particularly in the beginning, is, from a diet standpoint, a nutrition standpoint, getting sugar out of our system. That's number one. And that makes a huge difference. Getting sugar out, getting a healthy eating plan, whatever that is for you. I agree with Heather. It is not going to be the same for everybody. And not everybody's body is going to work the same. I don't know, Heather, you may do it, but I recommend a naturopath here and find out what your food sensitivities are. find out what your body feels more comfortable with. And then we work with a woman to take out a lot of the foods, at least for 30 days, that may be causing inflammation, irritation, weight gain, bloat, whatever that is. Because again, once a woman tells me, oh my God, I feel better. I mean, my body feels lighter. I feel better. I'm sleeping better. I haven't had a migraine in the last week. That goes a long way also to your mood, to the way you feel, to your confidence. And then, like we talked about, I mean, I have a naturopath. If you're working with someone like Heather and you're also working perhaps on the alternative side, if you like doing meditation, if you like dance, if you like yoga, I walk every day in nature. I mean, it's going to be different for everybody, but whatever it is to get you into that space and also to celebrate. I think Heather said it so wonderfully. I mean, if we're lucky enough to get to this stage, and ladies, I am post-menopause. There is light at the end of the tunnel. Celebrate it. The changes stuck. The symptoms stuck sometimes, but we're at that point, as Heather said, we don't care what people think. We know who we are. We're trying different things. We're learning different things. I've got French on my Duolingo now, and my Waze is in French. It gives us the opportunity to do different. Most of us are still working, or many of us are still working post-menopause. So I would say celebrate some of it. Think of it as, wow, I got here. And what we're imparting to younger women about this conversation, about talking about it, about things that you maybe can mitigate before you even get to perimenopause.
Mm-hmm. Appreciate that. Thank you so much, Debbie. Now we're going to go through kind of a quick fire question round. Just quickly answer some of the most basic questions about menopause that we're asked all the time. So we'll ping pong back between Heather and Debbie for this. So Heather, we'll start with you. Are the intensity of hot flashes different among women?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. And different among races and ethnicities as well.
Can you say something about that?
Well, we now know that we used to say that hot flashes might last a year or so, get over it, put on some red lipstick, bake your husband a pot roast and go on with your day. We now know that hot flashes and night sweats can last for up to 10 plus years after your final menstrual period, and that women of color tend to have longer, harder vasomotor symptoms than Asian women or white women. So we no longer say, oh yeah, I'll be fine, just wait it out. No, now we treat them fairly vigorously because it could be there for quite a while.
And I will attest to the fact that my mother had hot flashes. She doesn't have them anymore, but she had them for about 25 years.
All right, Debbie, over to you. Are there natural treatments for menopause symptoms, and are there some treatments you would highly recommend?
Well, there are, but I will tell you, Linda, I have to be very careful because of the estrogen and the breast cancer. So I actually, which is why I said before, I actually advise the women that I work with to talk to someone, a naturopath, a functional medicine doctor. They don't seem to be getting the answers from their medical doctors. No offense intended there, Heather.
No, that's why I said natural treatments. Are there natural treatments for menopause symptoms that you would recommend? And you noted some: yoga, stretching, meditation.
Oh, and it's
prayer,
also
diet.
your supplements. I think I'm very careful to make sure that I keep up with vitamin D, that I keep up with supplements. I mean, I take a slew of things every day that have helped me. So, and most of us know when we have that glass of wine, there goes the hot flash. When we have the cup of coffee, there goes the hot flash. Well, you decide. The wine may help you because it makes you feel good and you're okay with that one hot flash. So I've literally got a fan still, Heather, if I'm sometimes having that wine. I also make sure that I drink coffee that has been checked for preservatives and mold. Same thing with my wine. I mean, there are things you can do to lessen in your diet some of the chemicals and everything else that we have out there. And I think that makes a big difference. So we start with diet. We start with crowding out the sugars, the alcohol, the starch, we're going to load up on vegetables. We're going to load up on the non-starchy vegetables, on lean proteins. We're not going to take away your coffee. But what we want you to do is just clean out your body for 30 days and then start adding back your food and see how your body reacts. And 9 out of 10 times, menopause symptoms are also reduced as the weight is coming off.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Debbie. Heather, once a woman begins menopause, should she be concerned about birth control?
Yeah, once you've been 1 year after that final menstrual period, or you've been surgically menopaused, induced menopause, then no, we don't have to worry about any surprises after that. But until that 1 year point, when you're officially menopausal, then yes, surprises can happen. And it did happen to one of my attending gynecologists when I was a resident. He was in his 60s and he thought his wife was going through menopause, and lo and behold, they had a surprise baby. And I said, Dr. Magedy, you're actually a gynecologist. And he goes, oh, I thought she was in the menopause. He drove a Rolls Royce and was like this cute little short man from Nigeria. And so they had a surprise. Whoops. She was like 52. And it's very, 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 very rare for pregnancy spontaneously after 45. But I tell women, I'm like, until we know for sure, either get him the snippy or I don't love birth control pills for women really after 40, or IUD or something like that. Just protect yourselves because you don't want to be on the news.
I love that.
And I knew a woman many, 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 many years ago. I was young, but she was 52. And surprise, surprise. Yeah. And it's usually not a really good surprise at that age.
And one more follow-on question for you, Heather. Are there benefits to taking low-dose birth control pills?
There are benefits for women that are looking for contraception that may be also having some mild symptoms of menopause. But I tell women that birth control pills, even low dose, are dosed differently than menopausal hormone therapy. So when we're on birth control pills, we're trying to suppress the ovaries from ovulating so we don't then, whoops, have a baby. At menopause, girls' ovaries are suppressed. They're like, they've moved to Miami Beach and they're living in an RV park. So we're not trying to suppress them. We're just trying to kind of just take the edge off those symptoms. So sometimes they're great for the right woman, but they are higher dosing than what we would give a woman for menopausal symptoms, which then of course raises the question about breast cancer and other things. So a lot of times I'll try to convince women around 50, hey, why don't we try to get off the birth control pills and try something else? An IUD is very, very safe for some women. A lot of times I'll convince the husband to go get the vasectomy and say, look, you want the action? Cut, cut, cut.
All
They
right.
act like it's a section of their balls, but it's not. It's totally just fine, but they'll act like it.